what seems to be right in the Republican Party depends on who you're talking to. Bob Ellis, you see on a national level and obviously a state level as well, Republicans who are fleeing their own party platform.
Yeah, not just walking away, but running away as hard as they can
Some
run.
of them screaming and running. Our friend Mitt Romney, who is arguably not the most right-leaning conservative politician to come on the scene lately, has been talking about who's the most electable as president in the next election. And one of the things that interested me, Bob, was that he seemed to be dismissive, almost eliminate the likes of Ted Cruz.
Well, that's not surprising. You have me at a disadvantage. I didn't see that or read that information from Romney, but I can kind of imagine what he might have said, and that he might be dismissive of Cruz is certainly no surprise. They seem to be at very opposite ends of the Republican spectrum, if not the political spectrum in general.
Well, it's interesting to me as well that that people are trying to marginalize the, quote, Tea Party candidates, the Rand Pauls, the Mike Lees, the Ted Cruzes of this world, for that matter, Sarah Palin, who the media has done a pretty good job of marginalizing Sarah Palin, don't you think?
Oh, very much so. They have certainly been at work since she was announced and came onto the scene back in 2008. They've done nothing but absolutely vilify her.
You know, it's interesting to me. I am not a huge Sarah Palin fan. I was like a lot of other conservatives, really excited when she was the VP nominee under McCain, and I thought she brought something really significant to the table.
She brought something conservative to the table.
Yes, and what I've discovered, though, when I say I'm not a fan, it doesn't mean I dislike her, but I've never jumped on her bandwagon. But the media and the wolves, the pack of wolves that descended upon Alaska to try and dig up dirt from her, came up empty.
Yeah, there's really nothing that came of that beyond these little innuendo things, these little mockery bits about seeing Russia from her porch, which she never said in the first place. Of course, they just didn't really have anything to throw at her beyond just their little spitwads.
And that's a little bit like the treatment that Ted Cruz has gotten, John McCain, who, isn't it interesting that he would choose Sarah Palin for a vice presidential running mate and then call Tea Party types wacko-birds?
Well, it is interesting. I think it's kind of par for the course with the way a lot of these so-called Republicans like John McCain operate. They're kind of opportunistic, that whenever they see that they can use a conservative like Sarah Palin or the Tea Party, they can use that to their advantage. Well, they've got an arm around you, they're all buddy-buddy, but whenever the rubber meets the road, when it really comes time for Republicans to fight for Republican values and principles, you're persona non grata. In fact, you're worse than that. You're basically seen as worse than a Democrat to their agenda, and it almost seems like they don't really want to fight for Republican goals.
Is it your view that a moderate Republican can win the presidency the next go-round?
Well, I think history is one of the best teachers there are, and what are we looking at? Three elections running now. We go back to what was it, 1996, and Bob Dole, very mushy, mealy-mouthed moderate. He lost it whenever it could have been won. Same thing happened again in 2008 with John McCain, and again with Mitt Romney in 2012. I think history teaches us that middle-of-the-road, mealy-mouthed Republicans who aren't willing to boldly stand up for Republican values and principles, they're not going to win.
Okay, then that leads me to the final question of the day, and that is it possible for a conservative to win the Republican nomination for president? next go round?
Well, that's the question. If you ask me if they could win the general, I have no doubts whatsoever they could. Ronald Reagan is probably the best example of that. Winning the primary is a different matter, though, because they don't just have to fight Democrats to win the primary. They have to fight their own party establishment to win, and that's the big question.
Well, there you've heard it. If you happen to be a right-wing, wacko-bird, Tea Party type Republican, someone who believes in the tenets of the Republican Party platform. That's the best definition of a Republican. Yeah. If that's the kind of Republican you happen to be, then you should be asking the same question. Can a conservative win in the Republican primary?